Empire's seen significant growth in the last few years since we last spoke. We only had 2 slice houses then, and now we have one in Edmond, which is about 20 minutes north of Oklahoma City. There's one in Stillwater as well, which is the home of Oklahoma State University. That's about an hour from here. It's about halfway between here and Tulsa. And then we have the Tulsa Slice House and these slice shops. And as you mentioned earlier, that's really something that we continue to see the possibility for growth for. And a lot of it's because the public is asking me for it. When people from a city, maybe 20 or 25 minutes west of here or south of here are saying, you get multiple people or city leaders who are reaching out to you saying, we'd love to have this. I mean, that's a really pretty good indicator that you still have room to grow, especially if the numbers are making sense and the team wants to do it. So I decided to really focus on that. We needed to continue to clean up some of our restaurants that struggled that opened in 2020. Burger Punk, the original one, opened in February 2020. Ouch. That was, and then Empire Tulsa was open for 5 days before the shutdown and then was closed for 7 months, and so we had to restart that.
Yeah.
And so losing Rev or offboarding Rev really cleared the way for us to clean up a lot of the things we had.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, founder and CEO of 84 Hospitality, Rachel Cope. Rachel, are you feeling unstoppable?
I've had
today?
6 coffees.
coffees.
And your energy makes me feel like I really need to bring it right now. So yes.
You kind of vibrate off your seat,
yes.
sister. I'm stoked. I'm feeling unstoppable because this is the second time we had you on the show. First time was episode 778. This is going to be episode 1191. I've been busy. You've also been busy since we last connected. And really this, I'm loving reconnecting with past guests, going deeper, growing relationships. And I think that is one of the lessons I've learned from my guess is taking care of those most the best that you have, your most loyal customers, right? And for me, those are like the restaurateurs I've had on the show that are just truly inspiring me and have great messages, and you're one of those people. So I can't wait to pick up where we left off. But before we do, let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it hasn't changed, which I think means that it's with me for life, especially since it's tattooed on me, which is figure it out. Just reminding myself that there's a solution. Just keep digging. It might not be what I first thought it was, but just don't give up, and no one's going to do it for you. And
yeah, sometimes the fear of, the things that have to happen in order to get to the next step hold us back. We never take the step, and it's never as bad as we make it out to be in our head. Also, if we overanalyze, we'll talk ourselves out of it. We'll scare ourselves out of it. Like, if you knew what it was going to take to get to where you are today, if you had that foresight, do you think you would have started 20 years ago?
No, I joke and say, I was so naive to really understanding what it was going to take.
Right.
Looking back, the restaurant group, let's see, Empire opened in September 2013. And I was working in restaurants long before that.
Right.
It's a grind. It kind of flies by, but as you said yourself about your own business earlier, when you love it, it doesn't really feel like work.
Right. I get to surround myself with the coolest people in the restaurant industry, and there are no better people, in my opinion, than restaurant people. So I got pretty good. So when we last spoke to you, I'm going to read through where you were. I believe you had 2 Empire pizzas. You had 1 Empire slice shop. Mm-hmm. This is 2021. You had Goro Ramen. You had Revolution. Am I saying that correctly?
I sold it because I couldn't pronounce it. So.
Okay. Burger Punk, Tori, and you were working on a coffee shop, and then you also had just closed Gun.
God.
Am I missing anything?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. We're sitting in a new restaurant today. Where are we today?
Today we were at Elizabetta.
So one new fine dining restaurant.
Yes.
Would you call this fine dining? I mean, it looks like fine. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but it's, it's affordable at the same time, which was, we want to build something that lasts for a long time. And like a lot of our concepts, doesn't really alienate many people by income.
Got it. So you said, okay, so where are you today? You saw the Empire Pizzas.
Yes, there are more than 2 of those now.
How many today?
Okay, let's run down the list. We've got 4 Empire Slice houses.
Okay.
Okay, that's the full service model. Table service, full bar.
Got it.
And then we've got 3 slice shops.
Got it.
That's our counter service model, beer and wine, majority takeout. And then we've got 2 burger punks, which is our little punk rock burger bar diner shop situation. I still have Goro Ramen. That's just a one-off here in Oklahoma City. And then this, Elizabetta. Now, we also have a sort of a miniature slice shop version, which is in the Paycom Arena, home of the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's our 2nd year there, and that's been a blast to kind of see how many different ways Empire can perform and in different size spaces.
Got it. So, okay. You've been busy.
Yes, there were some closures and sales and things in there as well. Some of those concepts you mentioned, they don't exist anymore, or at least not for me.
Right. So it sounds like I see this a lot happening. People, as restaurateurs evolve and they progress, they learn that sometimes it's better to find out which one of your concepts is the winning equation, the winning formula, and to double down on what is working really well and to scale versus trying to do more different things. Is that something?
Even as you were naming off those concepts in the coffee shop, I was kind of shaking my head at myself going, why was I doing so many different things? I know why I was doing that, because I'm a curious person. We're in a growing city where some of these concepts maybe don't exist yet, and I want to see them happen. And so we've let ourselves take those on, and looking back, I'm like, why'd we do that? At least we recognized they weren't for us anymore. Some of those only lasted a year. The coffee shop only lasted a year before I said, you know what? It's not for me.
Yeah, like you were saying, like there are things, like I think it's really important too for our listeners to understand that you look at success and you think that they just have they have like the magic touch, but the reality is that if you're batting 500, and I think based off of what you said, you're somewhere around 600 or 700. If you're doing 500 with concepts, like you have to accept that not everything is gonna be knocked out of the park. Maybe like your first concept was, like it you gotta swing, and sometimes you miss. You
kind of chase that high.
Yeah. And
you can talk yourself into almost anything. You mentioned Revolucion, which we ended up shortening to Rev Mex at one point, our Mexican restaurant. We opened that only a few months apart from our second restaurant, which was Goro. And in hindsight, I never would have done that. It wasn't really a style of food I was passionate about. It kind of was to fill a space that a developer had pushed at us and kind of set some parameters for the type of concept they were looking for. And looking back, like, it was in an up-and-coming area. The metrics didn't really... We just thought, well, we've been successful with these first 2 concepts. People will find us. People will come.
Yeah. It's that you start to believe your own success.
Yeah, you drink your own Kool-Aid. Yeah. You drink your own espresso. And that was a struggle. But I'm glad I learned that early on. And when we've been testing new concepts that are maybe not checking all those location boxes or metrics, but we think might work, we at least limit our risk with the term of the lease and some of the financial investment involved. They're lower risk projects. But yeah, Rev was really a challenge for us for 5 years. And then we can talk more about that later, but ended up deciding to being in a good position to sell it. I think about a year and a half ago to some friends, after it had found its footing finally. Yeah.
So okay. 1, 2. If we're going back where you were in 2021, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total locations among all of your concepts. Today you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I think 11, basically.
9, 10, 11, 12.
If we count the arena, which it is its own monster, maybe we should just call it a whole and quit referring to it as a half. But yeah, if we did that, there'd be 8 Empires, 2 Burger Punks, 1 Goro Ramen, and Elizabetta.
So you've scaled. So from where you are, you have a larger footprint, but you're narrowing your focus is what I've kind of
picked
up on.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's go back to 2021. I think when I last spoke to you, one of the things that you said that you were excited about, you were working on with Revolution. I'm probably not.
We'll just call it Rev.
Rev, okay, Rev. You were working on a ghost kitchen. You had Baby Burrito.
Yeah.
And you were excited about that. Has the world changed since 2021? Did the ghost kitchen thing pan out for you as like you wanted it? I'm just curious. What's your opinion for that?
We really don't do those anymore. Now I'm the one that's distracted by the phone
No, this is
call.
funny. We are in a restaurant. Restaurant noises are happening. There's
They
a
are.
voicemail.
There's mopping.
If we
and
keep on
phones.
talking, that private voicemail that maybe the whoever the customers might not want to
Yes.
get out there. So we'll just
Correct. I didn't even know that when they leave a message that it plays it until now. So I just learned something about my own restaurant.
I can't figure out what they're saying. So as long as we're talking, they won't be able to hear it.
Perfect. Okay, I think she's done now.
Funny moments.
All right.
So yeah, like what did you learn about ghost kitchens? Like what was the lesson there?
Really, they served a purpose for us then, and that was really for all the reasons that a lot of people did it. It was a way to try to reach more guests out of the same footprint, in a time where we were trying anything to create
any
sales.
solution. Like tell me more.
Yeah.
Right?
And so really for me, it was Burrito Baby. So we had it there. We were just backwards on the words, but I love that branding and I love that concept. And I kind of put that in my pocket for later, maybe as something that we tried in a few years later or never, but they didn't really work. We didn't need to do that anymore.
It's a concept that has legs. You've seen people scale that concept. Anything, tortilla and stuffed, or like whether it be tacos or burritos, or even my friend in Dallas who's doing Dilla's quesadillas, like killing it with that right now. It's definitely has legs. I think also too, the pandemic was a good example of if something's new, something shiny, and there's enough people that get excited about it, it can kind of swell and create this like this is the future. And we can kind of drink that Kool-Aid.
We saw so many people really get involved in that. Even if they were maybe even renting as a developer, they were creating these kitchens people could come and use for this exact thing.
What were your challenges with that? Like if there were lessons learned?
Well, that concept specifically, it couldn't operate without the food we were already making there. I mean, it was a burrito shop inside of a Mexican restaurant. It was just taking like one type of food that there was sort of a hole in the market for because there was really only Chipotle and maybe one other place, Freebirds or something. But the challenges it was complicating our regular operations once we reopened for full service. People didn't understand that Burrito Baby was inside Rev, and that's where they'd pick it up. And so we ended up just making a burrito. It said Burritos Baby, like section on the Rev menu that had all your favorite burritos. And then we had to retrain the Burrito Baby clientele to understand that those were still available. Now you just order through Rev. And it was just a little bit confusing, but yeah, we just didn't need it anymore. And as far as doing that now, is that a lever people could still try to pull? I think yes, but to get people to really buy into a brand and to have longevity with something, I think you have to be able to touch it. You have to be able to see it, at least in my opinion, in my experience. And when people couldn't do that, it kind of gets out of sight, out of mind a little bit.
As a student of the industry, never-ending student, right? What are there scenarios where you see ghost kitchens working?
I haven't really thought about it, if I'm being completely honest with you. You see kind of funny things where people are literally cooking out of their kitchens and they're like reheating pizza rolls, and somehow they've gotten on DoorDash and they're selling those to people. And so I'm just not sure. I don't know how much the public really believes in them anymore.
Yeah, I think where I've seen it work is one, if you have a partnership with a celebrity, somebody who has millions of followers, who's an influencer, and you can partner with them to use their their influence, their brand, they're the physical side of it because they have such a loyal following, like Mr. Beast, for example, right? But even that was, I feel like, short-lived. Is that still going? Or like, are they still like? I would love to know like what the.
I never know what that guy's up to.
Right, but then if you're franchising your intellectual property, i.e., your brand and the recipes, and you're using other restaurants to push it out, to manage that level of consistency is like, how do you manage that consistency? You know, so there's that challenge. I think where it's cool is if you're looking to scale a concept. Maybe you're doing pop-ups and you're in between food truck, or you're thinking. We talked in the last conversation about how you feel about food trucks, if you want to echo that sentiment.
Well, Burger Punk started as a food truck.
Yeah.
And they're just so tricky. You have to have a home base for health purposes, and also a lot of the bulk prep and offloading stuff that maybe you didn't use that night that you don't want to leave on the truck overnight, and it's a lot of work.
Right. I think it can be cool if you're looking to eventually get into a brick and mortar and you're starting as a pop-up, and maybe you do a food truck, but you're using your ghost kitchen as a commissary, and if people you're using now the food truck to promote your brand, and you're getting out into the community, something physical. Mm-hmm. But if people want it, 5 days a week, then they can order it
from the ghost kitchen
until you get your brick and mortar where you're maybe doing like a more traditional restaurant.
I think that kind of combines what you were thinking and what I was saying about people being able to see you. Mm-hmm. And know that you're
relationship.
Yeah, and that you're real and who they're spending money
kitchen.
with. Yeah,
an alive kitchen.
A human kitchen that feeds into a ghost kitchen. Yeah.
So when did you decide to close Rev? When did that happen?
Well, in 2020, like everyone, we were trying everything to keep Rev open, but it was a large footprint. It took a lot of people to operate, and at that time, we just kind of consolidated our operations into the number one to-go food ever, which was pizza. So we combined all of our efforts into that and worked on keeping Goro open with the staff that we had as far as being able to kick to-go out of there. But what that time allowed us to do, I mean, obviously grants and PPP and those things were extremely helpful for Rev. And when we reopened, we had spent a lot of time reworking our inefficiencies there. A lot of it was in the prep and shaving off a lot of those hours and working on changing recipes, because we knew based on what we had sort of struggled with before, that benchmark of where we needed to get to. So we were able to really work on those problems while we were closed before we reopened. And when we reopened and everyone was spending all this pent-up money and energy going out to eat, and our sales were the highest they'd ever been, we were also the most efficient and best priced we'd ever been.
How far after the 2021 when I last had you on the show was that?
Gosh, well, I think we literally just sold it maybe a year and a half ago.
So, like, when you were operating at your peak, was it like 2022? Was it like 3 years ago?
2021, when we opened back up, I'm thinking that's when it was, because in my mind, I know that we reopened Goro. That was our first kind of modified service. That was September, I think, of 2020.
And that was your common concept or ramen.
That's a ramen concept. Yeah, it had moved locations, but they had a patio, and so we were doing some modified service with table spacing inside. And so I'm using that as kind of a timeline marker here. Yeah. That was September 2020. So I'm going to bet that Rev, some reopened for modified service before the end of 2020, somewhere between September and the end of the year.
So when you were talking about kind of getting Rev to a point where it was optimized, you had benchmarks you were trying to hit. First, was Rev full service?
Yes.
How many seats was it?
Gosh, it was about a 4,000 square foot restaurant, and it also had about 1,000 square foot patio. So I'm gonna guess that outside there were probably 40 seats outside, and that inside plus the bar we were probably pushing 100. So it was big. It was like 120 to 130 seats.
Was it like a traditional Tex-Mex or more authentic Mexican?
It started as kind of more authentic with some dishes that were some of our kitchen staff and leadership in the kitchen, some of their favorite dishes that were maybe even Guatemalan or Central American and Mexican. And that didn't really make sense when you put me as the face of pushing that,
Right.
which I recognize now but didn't recognize then.
Okay.
And so we shifted into the kind of more of a Tex-Mex model, but tried to continue to push some of our favorites from our team in a different way.
What were the benchmarks you were aiming for when you were refining your back of house operations, prep, labor, all that?
You know, we really look at our labor cost, and you can break it down so many different ways, but we really try to hit, you know, like a 30% labor cost, but that's all inclusive. That's front of house, back of house. And if we shoot for 30 and we land somewhere between 30 and 35, we're usually still good.
Does that include management?
Yeah.
Salary? Were there partners in that?
There were. I ended up, a lot of people wanted out
Yeah.
of the restaurant business in general.
The great resignation, right?
Yes, but that was okay because I saw what Rev was capable of. I believed in that, and I cared about those people, and they had received a lot of their money back. I mean, Rev opened in November of 2016, so over a 5-year period, they had received some of their money back. So really what I tried to do was get them close to whole and structure some buyout deals and kind of bet on myself that I was going to be able to make this place profitable, whether we kept it or I wasn't even really thinking about selling it.
What up, Unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing and recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
That benchmark you were aiming for that you talked about before was 30%.
That was for the labor, yeah.
And you hit that. When you were like...
We were at like 44.
Prior.
Yes.
Wow. So you dropped 14 points. Yeah. Any tips on how you made that happen?
I mean, again, a lot of it was sort of in the prep work we were doing. We were a scratch kitchen, and so we were making all these salsas and all these different marinades and a lot of time-consuming things. And so we looked at those. We were even timing some of them to see what was taking the longest. Doing inventory there was so complicated because...
How often were you doing it?
We were doing it weekly at that point, just to keep ourselves as tight as we could. And doing that and getting an accurate count because it was so tedious on every spice that goes into making this marinade, man, it was tough.
Yeah.
We had someone working with us at the time who basically talked me into, and I'm thankful for this.
Is that Matisse Group?
No, this was actually a chef that was working with us for a little while, and he had worked in a lot of hotels where they were having to find shortcuts when there was, very low margins and some of the product and space they had to even store things. Kind of showed us some shortcuts.
Okay.
Where we started buying like pre-marinated fajita stuff and different cuts, and this fish was different. And so we really just kind of tore it all apart and then put it back together. And when we did that, we shaved off a lot of that labor by creating more simple recipes for things.
Yeah.
That was a big part of it. And we went back and even looked at the stations and who was working what and how, and reworked the labor model completely. So it was a combination of a lot of things.
Did you do anything like a descending expense report to find out like where are you spending your most money, and like how can you start putting your energy into like, okay, if this is where most of our money is going, let's track how efficient we're being with it, because this is where we can put the biggest dent in
that
our
would have
cost of goods.
been really smart of me to do that. What I kind of do naturally, and I never really thought about making a report out of it, is when I take a P&L, I'm already highlighting I mean, I've looked at them for so long. Those things jump out at me.
Yeah.
And so with the highlighter, I'm going, that's too high. That's too high. And our team knows what's too high now as well. And so they're able to identify those things throughout the week with different tech tools and stuff that we're definitely using now. But forecasting was incredibly important, and setting realistic sales numbers and using those as targets for how much are we spending on labor and cost of goods and things they can control.
So when you got it to this point where, you said it was operating at its finest, where were you with percent profit?
I mean, we were probably somewhere between 12 and 16%.
It's decent.
It was really good.
Yeah.
And we had no debt.
Yeah, that's even better.
Yeah.
Did you own the property or were you renting?
No, I was renting it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What happened for you to say, like, you know what, this isn't worth the grind anymore?
It just wasn't. I didn't love it anymore.
When did that happen? What year was that?
When we opened? No. I think, man, it was just such a grind there all the time, and we had these other concepts that needed my attention and our attention, and it was just really tough. It was a big restaurant. There was a lot of turnover with the staff, and because our check average wasn't super high, and so I felt like they weren't making a lot of money, but we needed a lot of people to cover how much ground there was, and just a lot of that. And I ended up recognizing that two people that I had worked with back in the day before I ever opened my own restaurant, they had opened a few restaurants themselves, and they had bought one of them from someone else and made it their own. Actually, they did it twice. And so I had seen them sitting at the bar top quite a bit. And they loved Rev. And like I said, it had been so good with the increased revenue just from people coming out in droves, plus these changes that we'd made, plus it was debt-free, all these things, that we were able to show a 3-year valuation for that. And I kind of pitched it at them, and there was some negotiation. I think when you do that too, you have to be ready. You have to really be ready to let go. And you also have to be okay if it doesn't work. You have to go, well, I'll keep doing it. But if somebody else truly loves it, why wouldn't I, cash out?
Right. It's like, you get a puppy and you think you're going to love it, and then you realize, this puppy's a pain in the ass. But if somebody's looking for a puppy, like, hey, I'll give you a deal.
All the animal lovers out there are going to hate you for that one. But yeah.
I love animals. Don't get me wrong. I also
know.
grew up with them, and I feel like I like my freedom more.
Puppies are tough.
Yeah,
get a cat. Get a bird.
Yeah. So what year did you sell?
I think it was maybe 2022. I'd have to go back and look. Everything's a blur these days, but it was definitely in the last 2 years.
So that scenario where you find a buyer and you basically identify an exit strategy, and you're negotiating, like, any tips on how to do that right to protect yourself? Or is this the first time you ever had to do that? Was this new for you? Did you learn anything?
This was the first time I'd ever sold a concept. I had closed them before, but I hadn't sold one to someone else. Now, we had looked at that a few times, and it just never really worked out. But people have pitched me buying their restaurants or concepts multiple times, and so I took that information. Having good legal counsel is invaluable. To find somebody who's really good at mergers and acquisitions, who can walk you through what that looks like. Having a financial person, as we have a fractional CFO who had done this quite often as well, who was able to provide information to not only me, but also the buyers when they had questions in a timely fashion. And for me, what also made it easy were these are people I care about. They're friends.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that what I was doing was not only a good deal for me, but was something I truly believed could be a good deal for them. And because of that, there was nothing to hide. I would never do that. And that made it easier to just kind of lay it all out there and answer their questions. And it honestly was really good. It was a really good experience. I know for a lot of people that can go a lot differently.
Right.
But for me, it was really good. And some of the things I think that we did negotiate about that were in there, to me, the price was the price. Because when I thought about it, I was like, well, I could make that same amount of money over the next 3 years and just keep operating it. And so I had come to terms with myself that if they didn't want to get on board with that number, that was okay. We would just keep rolling.
Yeah.
And so that made it easier for me to not feel like I had to negotiate down.
Got it. So you get out of Rev. You find a win-win situation. You feel good about it.
Yeah.
You're freeing up time to focus on what matters more, or what you care about. What did you care about? Where was your focus? Where did you want your attention to be after selling this?
Empire's seen significant growth in the last few years since we last spoke. Like, we only had 2 slice houses then, and now we have one in Edmond, which is about 20 minutes north of Oklahoma City. There's one in Stillwater as well, which is the home of Oklahoma State University. That's about an hour from here. It's about halfway between here and Tulsa. And then we have the Tulsa Slice House and these slice shops. And as you mentioned earlier, that's really something that we continue to see the possibility for growth for. And a lot of it's because the public is asking me for it. When people from a city, maybe 20 or 25 minutes west of here or south of here are saying, you get multiple people or city leaders who are reaching out to you saying, we'd love to have this. I mean, that's a really pretty good indicator that you still have room to grow, especially if the numbers are making sense and the team wants to do it. So I decided to really focus on that. We needed to continue to clean up some of our restaurants that struggled, that opened in 2020. Burger Punk, the original one, opened in February 2020.
Ouch.
That was, yeah. And then Empire Tulsa was open for 5 days before the shutdown and then was closed for 7 months. And so we had to restart that.
Yeah. And
so, losing Rev or offboarding Rev really cleared the way for us to clean up a lot of the things we had. And, we mentioned Tori in the last podcast that we did. That Jeff and I remember us sitting down after an ice storm had made us close for like 2 weeks because everything was frozen. And I just looked at him. We were sitting there and I said, do you love this place? It had only been open for like 3 months. And he goes, not really. I said, me neither. I said, I don't want to, let's not do this anymore.
Well, that was a knee-jerk reaction because of the pandemic, where you, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was born out of the pandemic because you were trying to think, okay, what can we do that is...
Well, we had Goro Ramen that was in that space, but our lease was not over.
Right.
It was going to renew in the next year and a half or so, but it's a complicated move. But to get out of Gun, which was our finer dining Japanese izakaya, we needed to... Gun was not going to make it.
Yeah, this was happening when we spoke last,
yes,
right?
And it was 5 nights a week, dinner only. And it had just gotten to a point where we're starting to break even, but there was no way with modified service, and we weren't built for it to go, that we were going to make it.
Yeah.
And so the only way to save ourselves, because we had partners in that as well, I own the real estate there, so that was a huge plus, was to move Goro into the Gun space. And basically what we did was Goro bought out. They paid a number for all of the furniture, fixtures, equipment that was very low, but was the number we needed to exit our partners who did not want to be part of Gun anymore.
Okay.
And that gave Goro an extra 1,500 square feet. I mean, they have benefited immensely from being in that. But, when I told Jeff that that's what I wanted to do, and he was always very trusting of my thoughts about moving things or what we were doing real estate wise. That was sort of my role. And so we did that, and Tori took over. It was a concept we quickly created to take over the space while we still had a lease there. And we just kept the same ownership as Goro so that everybody was like, oh, well, now we can make an extra this on fried chicken, but we also have this for no extra money. Because we just used some operating cash to do a quick flip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of Goro, we never really got into the business model of Goro. It's ramen. Is it the service model, full service?
Yes.
And you said you were doing modified service.
We were.
So before you had moved to where the Gun location was?
Well, no, we were doing full service at the old Plaza location. The modified service comment was really just when we reopened during the pandemic, so late 2020, where we were doing a lot of to-go, and I call modified service tables spaced out predominantly patio service and still heavy to go.
Got it. And Goro was really the mind child of Jeff, right? Like,
yeah, Jeff and I. So Jeff had a ramen truck. We've known each other since he and my sister were friends in college. And so I think I don't know if I told the story before, but
you're going to change his life.
He used to
sneak
us. That was a different partner.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
never mind. That was for Empire.
That was for Empire. But yeah, Jeff was doing graphic design, and I had seen all these pop-up dinners in LA and on the coast, and I knew he was doing the ramen truck. I knew it was really popular. And so I just asked him if he wanted to have fun and do some pop-up dinners with me. And we created this thing called Project Slurp. And we were able to do like 12 or 13 dinners in the first year, where Jeff would come up with a food menu and I would pair all these cocktails.
Yeah.
And, I was funding it basically, and then we'd split the proceeds from the dinners. And through that, people really started, we were selling out everyone so quickly. And there was an opportunity that came up in the Plaza District with a landlord that we knew there, who reached out about this space that just so happened to be perfect ramen shop size. And so, I kind of pitched it at Jeff to see if he thought that was a good size space for what he would need to do a ramen shop. And then we just went from Project Slurp and just rolled right into Goro, and that opened in like July of 2016. So yeah, and Jeff's still a partner there. He doesn't operate with us anymore, but he has Mader now, his Lao restaurant that's in the old Goro space. So like, we could do a whole nother episode with how the things have moved and changed. But yeah.
So in terms of, I feel like that was going, like you were growing that when I last spoke to you. So where is Goro today in terms of? Goro
is just a one-off, and it'll stay that way.
How many seats?
It's about 70-ish seats inside. We have enclosed the patio over the last year and a half or so to gain those year-round.
Okay.
But, from a revenue standpoint, going from a 1,600 square foot ramen shop that couldn't do any to go because we didn't have the capability, we just didn't have room, we didn't have space to do that. I'd say our sales have grown by almost like 40%.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So again, what a great move for us to be able to get out of a lease and take it over. And then Jeff was able to, strike a deal with those landlords and go do his passion project, and just, everything for a reason.
Yeah. And I feel like ramen is similar to pizza in the sense, flour and water, decent margins in terms of the cost of goods.
It should be.
Yeah. Well, you can elevate it real quickly putting ingredients in there, right? But for the most part, I feel like operationally, and it's doing one or a few things really well. So you're not having this giant menu. It's like one or a couple things a few different ways, similar to pizza, right? So it's one of those concepts that you see people have success with because operationally it's streamlined.
Yeah, I kind of missed the little space because, God, we were so fast there.
Yeah.
When we when we moved it into the Gun space, we had created some favorite dishes at Gun that people really wanted to continue to see. So we sort of merged the two menus. We overcomplicated it a little bit. It's fine. It still does very well. But it was fun being in that dark, tiny 1,600 square foot space with the music turned up, and it was so dark people had to use a flashlight. Now Goro is in a much nicer space that wasn't built for Goro.
Right.
So it doesn't quite feel like I wish it felt in there.
Okay.
But it's still, it's beautiful and it's fantastic. And but the menu has grown a little bit, and I do feel like we've become a little bit slower there. But it does a ton of takeout, which makes up that difference.
Yeah, it's something that travels really well too.
Yeah, especially if you package it correctly.
Right. So, okay, continuing along your evolution, you opened two additional Empire Slice houses. You were at 2, now you're at 4. You did 2 more slice shops, and you opened an additional Burger Punks, and then where we're seeing today, Elizabetta. Am I saying that correctly?
Elizabetta, yes.
Yes, Elizabetta. So, I guess what was the order of operation?
And oh God, I need like a piece of paper.
When you closed Rev, you said you wanted to focus on scaling Empire Pizza.
Yeah, so I think we already had some irons in the fire with that. So let's think if I can do this. So, okay, Empire Tulsa, that was the second slice house that opened March 2020. At that time so that year I also moved, which at the time was called Easy E, was our original slice shop. But I felt like once we moved it away from Empire, because they were next door to each other, that people wouldn't get the reference anymore. So we said, what name do we come up with that ties them together, but still delineates between full service and counter? And so we chose Empire Slice Shop, a little alliteration. Shop to me felt smaller than house, We found a second generation space that was further north, because that was the other thing is during COVID, when we combined all of our operations, our original Empire had moved into a new location in late 2018 or early 2019. And so we had a much larger footprint, and we realized that we were able to do to go out of that space. So we were kind of stealing from ourselves and having to pay 2 rents and 2 staffs to do what could be done in one place, we felt like. So we were able to negotiate a lease in 2020 for a second generation space that put us about 4 miles north of the Plaza District, and try this to go slice shop model. So that happened in 2020. And then I think what happened next was Empire in Edmond. And that just ended up being a space that I happened to walk by one day, and I called the landlord and said, what are you doing with this? And it was an old furniture shop, and that's been a great location for us. So there was that. And then I think what happened next was, Empire Slice Shop in Mayfair Village, which is also in Oklahoma City, but had just been a revamped, cool little strip on the west side of town.
Well, I guess
I'm like, Burger Punk, where did these go? Yeah.
Yeah. I think the things I'm curious about when you said, okay, well, let's scale Empire, the full service and the shop, the slice counter service. Mm-hmm. What things weren't in place that you had to build in order to double down and scale something?
Well, what's kind of interesting is I say that I wanted to focus on that, but I'm not sure I even had a plan yet.
Okay.
I really didn't. I had spaces that I liked that checked boxes for me, but it wasn't like I'm going to build 6 slice shops before the end of the year. That wasn't the plan. Things that had kind of been thrown at us that made sense kept happening, and we were able to focus on that because we had less things going on. But I will say now we have some consultants that we've hired that we started using out of Texas that I was connected to by our dear friend Brandon Hunt of Via 313. And we really are focused on cleaning up processes and things to see what's possible for Empire. Is it possible to scale? Are we maxed out? And throughout the creation of all these different footprints and places, we had kind of lost sight of the heart of who we are and some of those important training things to create consistency. So, you said that about a ghost kitchen. How would you have consistency? How could I ever franchise it or sell it? It's less valuable if it's a mess. And that's kind of like that Swan reference about the gentle on top of the water and crazy underneath.
So what were identifying, swallowing your pride and reflecting at yourself? What were the things that needed to improve? What were the things you identified that needed to be cleaned up?
When we opened Empire Slice House in Stillwater, that was
number 3 or 4.
That was number 4.
Yeah.
So it just opened about a year ago.
Okay.
It just, or maybe its 1-year anniversary is literally next week. I have to look. It was chaos. It's a smaller college town, so the labor pool there, we weren't able to pull from ourselves with our senior leadership from the kitchens and servers from a training standpoint. We really had to go with just really 3 or 4 of our 84 leadership team who are dedicated to the Empire side and go there and try to hire and train 60 people who didn't have a lot of experience, were college kids, things like that. And I watched that open, and we got murdered right off the bat. I mean, we're talking $70,000 a week when we were expecting to do 40. And that was awesome, but whoa. I mean, there was one night I just unplugged the phones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it was chaos, but like, what did you do? So you just didn't have the people in place, I'm hearing?
Our training processes were not great. I was recognizing, because I went there and what I saw was a lot of our team contradicting ourselves when we were trying to teach someone something. The bar program didn't really have any solid training. I would watch one person work the ovens differently than someone else, and I would ask who showed them that, and it was just kind of a lot of, and I just saw how much they were struggling. The kitchen, a lot of kitchen issues.
So did your training change?
It is still changing.
Okay.
Right now.
So like talk us through the evolution of your training to get to more consistency.
Yeah. So what we did when the consultants came in, and they used to be sort of franchise. I don't know what their title was exactly, but
This isn't the Matissa group?
No, that's here. I have many people that I pull from, but yeah, this is KIC Hospitality.
Okay.
Based out of Texas, and Jeff Gothard, one of the partners in that, was the former COO for Ramen Tatsuya.
Okay.
So he was there when they grew that from 1 to 20 units.
Got it.
And then Steve McAloon has been in multiple different leadership positions. And they just reached out to me because of Brandon and just asked kind of what I was up to and said they liked what we were doing. And we met and we hit it off. And they kind of made a pitch for how they could be helpful because...
What did that pitch look like? What were the things that they wanted to offer for you?
Sort of a deep dive into our group. And I had voiced some concerns with my own limits and my team's limits from an operational standpoint, because most of what we know, we've learned together. And a lot of us have grown up in this company, but we've gotten to a point with how many units that we have that our communication techniques needed to change, that our training needed to change, that we just needed some guidance, and I wasn't able to give it to us anymore because my role has grown so much. If all I was doing was focusing on operations, sure, I could have done it.
But I'm thinking biz dev, and you have HR.
I'm basically our CFO.
Yeah.
I'm wearing a lot of hats still that I like to do, but I don't sometimes even know what the oven temperature is supposed to be anymore because I don't do that anymore. Right. And so when they were asking for my attention to dive into those things, I was pulled in so many directions. So then I felt like I was stalling our team. I was stalling us out. I was the pinch point, and I recognized that, and I needed help. I was tired of feeling like I was letting the team down. I was tired of giving a C+ performance because I was also trying to have a life, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
So their pitch was basically, let us deep dive into your concepts. We're going to do a 3-month consulting program. Here's what we're going to give you. Actually it was a 4-month period. Here's what we're going to deliver to you at the end of the 4 months, which was basically a huge 52-page plan of...
Didn't you hear me? I'm busy. I can't read this.
Yeah. Well, it was, when something's important. Yeah, and I was building this at the same time. There's a lot going on. There's always a lot going on, though, but it'll never be easier without
help.
Doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And so I can't stress that enough to people, because I see people grow and they get excited and they go too fast. But if you don't have structure, it's going to get messy, and you're going to have to pay that tab sooner or later.
A train runs better on tracks.
Yes.
You need structure underneath that beast to
right.
get it going straight and smooth, and that structure needs maintenance, and that is what systems and processes is. It's a way to get things moving smoothly.
Totally. And what they also allowed us to do, they said, Rachel, what are your goals for the company?
When did they ask you these questions?
These were sort of before the end of their analysis.
No, what's the date? When do they come on and start? When is this realization?
I want to say this kind of started in August
of
last year.
2024.
Mm-hmm.
They identified that you needed better communication systems. They identified that you needed better training systems.
They verified what I already knew.
Yeah. You also were starting to get to the point where you kind of reached your maximum capacity on what you could, you were the pinch point. I think that's a natural thing to happen as you start scaling. Eventually, this is why people, it's at about that 10 unit mark where, if you're going to scale beyond that, you need to invest in your C-suite. your executives, and you might need 4 or 5 executives, right? Chief, at least a CFO, at least a CMO, at least a COO, and maybe like a chief people person, right? At least, and then that's 5 chiefs. That's a lot of chiefs.
At least.
With all 6-figure incomes.
Right.
So like that's like the point. It's like, okay, well, that's why a lot of people go get venture capital around this time, because they can't cover the resources they're pulling in isn't enough to get to that next step.
Right.
Was that what you were feeling?
I think we had the resources. I think that we had created some positions along the way where we had promoted from within into positions that were sort of just overlapping what a GM role should have been. We were doing so much at like the 84 level for the stores, and we're going through that right now.
What do you mean by the 84 level?
84 would be basically any of our district managers, area directors.
So your leadership team.
Yes, above the store level.
Got it.
So 84, as of 4 months ago, had 14 full-time employees at the 84 level.
And 84 is the name of the restaurant group.
Yes, 84 Hospitality Group.
Is that a C Corp or LLC? Or S Corp, I mean?
It's actually an LLC. And I wasn't, that's worked out fine for us so far. If you want to get into the... all the...
We'll unpackage that maybe later.
Yeah,
Because I feel like we got to still unpackage. KIC Hospitality came in. Communication, hiring, anything else they identified that you've been working on since then?
Well, when they asked me what I wanted for the company, if they had pulled all our numbers and financials together and we looked at it, we took a significant drop in revenue last year. A lot of people did.
I think a lot of that was an industry-wide slam.
Totally. And having people who've seen other markets and have access to other markets' information through other people that they work with or know, again, was invaluable because it showed me that we weren't alone.
Yeah, it's huge.
But you had to do something, or you'll potentially, like, do we keep going down? What about inflation? How are we going to handle
cost of goods going up, labor going up,
everything?
Revenue, yeah.
Well, and we made so many increases above industry average during COVID because COVID showed us that we really wanted to take care of our people, especially those who'd been loyal to us.
That was a big part of our conversation.
Through the hardest time.
Yeah.
And we still honor that, and I do believe we're still above the industry average, and I do believe we provide a lot of help. But a lot of these extra things that we had taken off their plate to make everyone's lives easier, we're sort of going, okay, that needs to be added back because a true GM runs their store as a whole. They don't have a culinary director and all these things doing it for them all the time. And so there is a little bit of a reverse happening right now where we're taking a lot of the things that we had taken on for the store levels and putting it back onto their plates. I mean, like I mentioned, we had 14 people. We have either, what's the word I want to, realigned some of the roles in our company to different positions. So I think 84 only has like 9 full-time people.
So you kind of looked at all we learned about this in the E-Myth where he says, Michael Gerber, great book. He talks about you have to write out your organizational org chart, the hierarchy. What does that look like, and what are the responsibilities next to all those names? So as you're growing and morphing, you have to expect that org chart to evolve with it, right?
Well, and what's crazy is that for me, I didn't know what an area director was supposed to be capable of because we were just making it up as we went,
right.
And in our group, we had some directors who were basically overseeing 3 units.
Right.
And they had a district manager underneath them.
So what is your org chart today? So at the top of it, CEO.
Yes.
Founder.
Yes.
Who are your direct reports?
So it would be a director of operations for 84 who oversees both Burger Punks, Goro, and this store. He's a partner here.
Okay.
And he also handles, we're wearing a lot of hats right now as we're going through some changes, but he handles some of our HR. He handles some of our tech stuff with Toast. He's kind of the person we go to for payroll things as well. He's about to get that off of his plate as we're hiring some different help. But so we have him. I've got a director for Empire specifically who oversees all of the Empire operations only. Yes. Director of development, which is my dad. He oversees facilities management, maintenance, equipment purchasing, and is helping me now that this project's complete, is helping me look at spaces for expansion or kind of working through some thoughts on what are our parameters for if Empire grew, like putting that on paper and figuring that out. So we have that. I also oversee basically the marketing team, which was a creative director who is actually going to take a role in a company that she created, but is still going to be with us part-time, but that is helpful.
What's her title?
It was creative director, yeah.
So not CMO?
No, and that's the thing, is that I was sort of handling the marketing, and that's a huge part of what I'm working on with KIC right now. We never made an annual marketing plan.
Yeah.
But if I can give anybody some advice, that will make everyone's life so much easier.
Yeah, and I think marketing, and here's the big gnarly horse pill that we have to swallow, and I hate that it's true, but marketing is becoming a more and more critical part of success in this industry. It used to be the magic duo was a front of house manager and an executive chef. That was like the match made in heaven.
Right.
And those were the partners, right? And now I'm seeing people who are like marketing mavericks and just like super talented marketers who have that much influence over the success of an organization, who are at partner level, because you need that element of your business, I think, going forward. It's just it's changing constantly. It's in this world of technology that's exponentially evolving. Like, you need somebody plugged into what's happening today, because it's just constantly changing.
It is. It's overwhelming at times, but starting with brand positioning statements and who we are for each concept, and then looking at the year and going, we were doing specials, a drink special, a snack special, or a pizza special every month. We can't gain any traction like that, because as soon as one's over, I barely had time to get it rolling, because the public didn't really know about it until week 2, when they finally saw that boosted Instagram post or whatever, or that article that came out, and by the time they learned about it, it was gone.
Yeah.
And we were making things so hard on ourselves to have to keep coming up with stuff all the time. No one cares.
Yeah.
What we care about is that you do something, we know about it, and we do it really well, and it fits the brand.
Okay.
And that's really what our focus is right now, is to lay that out, so that my sister, who runs all of our social media and does photography, is not pulled to 14 different units who are all running a different special for really no reason other than because they think they should. That is stopping.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't have to happen every month. We looked at the calendar and said, okay, January's this, February through the end of March is this, and it's paired with this marketing tactic, a direct mailer to these neighborhoods. We haven't done that before. Let's see how it works. Let's push some Toast loyalty emails and see what kind of traction we get there. So we poked a few things, but it's awesome because that marketing plan allows us to really put some effort and money behind tactics that we think can be impactful, not only to create sales immediately, but to bolster the brand awareness. And that was always just something we tried, but we never really had a plan for. And I'm enjoying learning about that. And that's one thing that I'm going to really apply myself to continuing to know more about, because as you just said, I think it's become so important.
Yeah.
Whether we want it to or not. I wish it was just about, I came here and ate and I told 10 people and then those 10 people came. It's not like that anymore because of saturation.
What do you mean by saturation?
Saturation of restaurants in general. Oklahoma City's growing. And then also just because we're bombarded constantly by social media.
Right.
Look at this new place. Look at this new place. And sometimes it takes one influencer who has 1 million followers to go say that this is the best burger.
Has a price point.
Yes.
And is it real? Or is it, don't get me started.
I know.
You're cranking me up, sister, and I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. My listeners are like, oh, God.
We'll have to have a different episode about marketing and general. And I do think that those can serve a purpose, but also I don't like pay for play.
Yeah, we can probably wrap up that. I want to go through this hierarchy. So far, you're at the top, CEO. You have 2 COOs. You have a director of maintenance. You have a marketing director, which you have your foot in that bucket, too, it sounds like, with your sister. Any other, direct leads, like what? And then after that, it's probably like general manager.
We have a fractional CFO.
I had that written down, but
fractional CFO. I mean, if I could have him full time, I would. He's a genius. But
I think this is the future.
Which part?
Fractional chiefs.
I think that it can be in some roles. I've tried so many different things lately. Like we've been outsourcing our accounting as we lost both in-house accountants to the world is such a crazy place. Our lead accountant left about 8 months ago and told me she was going to take a job with a company that's a nationwide company that basically takes people like her who aren't CPAs and aren't really maybe like a controller level type person, but put them in a fractional controller role. You pay a subscription fee, and then she oversees a team out of Nepal that does all the accounting.
Yeah.
So you kind of get 3 people for a subscription fee. And that subscription fee annually was half as much as I was paying 2 people.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's be profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
So I think, I think that the future of restaurants at the chief level, if you, it's kind of like the gig economy, I think is going to scale to executive level, where, because when you think about a chief's role is to really just know what's best and to kind of like let information stream down. Right. So if you know what the job done right looks like, you can basically have, temporary like gigs where you're like coaching these people, whether it be finance or you're knowing you're a connector of services. Right. So you go maybe a 6 month or a 1 year fractional term where you come in and you basically help that organization, whether it be finance or marketing or operations. And you have like these specialists that you and they have multiple restaurant groups that they're representing. Right. And they wake up and like, oh, I have a new gig, like it's a short, it's because I think that those people can handle a lot, because it's a matter of figuring out the formula and staying plugged into that vertical and then helping people who are struggling with those touch points get to where they need to be.
Yeah. And I think it goes,
but also it's outsourcing, to your point, like finding those companies in Nepal.
And they don't know me. They don't know us. And when I need something, they're not sitting next to me.
Yeah, that's
and
the downside.
Is a downside of that. But I think that there are some roles that could definitely work for, and then I think there are some others that, it's really hard to not have that full-time CFO who is monitoring every dollar being spent and taking care of loans and all these things that bog you down.
So what are the direct reports to your CFO, or who reports directly to the CFOs? Manager, GMs?
Well, no, really, it's kind of his specific role really is dealing with me.
Okay. And
then I take that information and play the CFO role. And then I'm communicating that to my directors. They're communicating it to their district managers and general managers. And so the only people I really communicate with after the CFO, the fractional CFO, are my directors specifically. And then they carry that message down.
Got it.
But what we're not really talking about right now is that, you said 2 COOs. I would call Britt and Steven really directors at this point, because Steve and Jeff are sort of acting as consulting dual COOs right now for me, which is awesome because they're taking what I want and need, and they're pushing that to my directors, and then they're following up and they're teaching and they're doing that right now. For how long, I don't know, but we created almost like a level above the director level that's with me temporarily, at least.
So you said you hired KIC Hospitality. They identified communication and training. So is this current model what they coached you on, or how are they helping you with communication? What strides in the have you made to improve communication?
It's really funny. The other day I said, and I think I mean this, I haven't fully decided yet. I said, I don't want to manage people anymore. I think it's really important to recognize what you do want and what you're good at. And I don't necessarily want to be the person that's on 8 calls for meetings. I don't think that's what I'm best at. I don't think that doesn't make me happy. I've been doing that for a really long time. I'd like to evolve past that.
Yeah.
So meeting structure in general. I mean, we had 10 meetings a week on site with all these managers. Then we made it bi-weekly, but they were still meeting on their own every week. And you look at that and you're like, why are we having, like, this is inefficient.
You have meetings about meetings.
Wait, meetings about meetings. God, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
And so what they've done is create this cascade structure of communication where there are some information that they have made templates for that the directors are filling in for their respective stores that are due by a certain time on Sunday or Monday morning. And then there's a 9
KPIs measuring that, like that kind of stuff? Or?
Yeah, it would just be like maybe what sales were last week, what was our labor, and then forecasting the next week. And then talking about being intentional with what are we going to work on this week specifically so that we don't get distracted by looking around all the time when we walk in a store.
Is there a name for this thing that they're helping you roll out?
Like in which part? The communication structure alone or just all of it?
Keep going along with the communication structure, and then I'll share what I.
Okay, cool. Thinking. Yeah, so they created like this cascade. So they'll have a call that Jeff and Steve are on. It's a Zoom call, so that everybody doesn't have to run around everywhere, and the director is leading the call. And they're going over everything, and they're setting goals for the week. The 2 district managers, and if they have a culinary director, are also on that call. So it's really just the consultants, a director, their district management team. That's who's on that call. And then the district managers take that information, and they have a separate call that's short with their respective GMs. And then the GMs have their own meeting later that day to relay all of this information from the top, basically.
To the front line.
And then on Friday, there's another call. And that's to see where we're at.
Yeah.
How did we do with these things we said on Monday? Is this done? How did our sales track? And so there's a follow-up. And then that just happens every week. Monday, Friday.
So the format you just described, at least at a big picture level, really reminds me of the level 10 meetings that EOS talks about in the book Traction. Are you familiar with?
Yeah, I know that book. Mm-hmm.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, kind of. They're using a different process with a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, I think is what it's called. We call it 40X.
40, is that what?
4 and then the letter D and then X.
4 disciplines
of execution. I think that's what it's called.
I'm going to look it up. Obviously, I typed it wrong. And is that that's the book by Chris McKenzie and Sean Covey.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay.
But what they did is they had our whole leadership team read that book, and they said, you guys need to get familiar with this. And really, the summary to me of a lot of that was setting measurables and then, defining who you are and then just beating that to death. You have to hammer it. If you want to change a habit, there has to be accountability and there has to be repetition. Totally.
Yeah.
And it's mostly that. And so a lot of what we're doing right now, after we've identified these things that we care about and want to focus on, now they're setting up measurables for the team and their respective roles, and then they're checking on that. There's a scoreboard.
Yes, the word was literally in my head.
Yeah, there's a scoreboard, and it's nice for me. I care about people so much to a fault at times, and I don't want to lead emotionally. I need to lead with facts.
Yeah.
And this provides a scoreboard of things that make or break your business for people by role, and it's very clear to see who's doing it and who's not.
Yeah.
And it's clear to them. And that's what they always needed and wanted that I couldn't really quite figure out how to create or couldn't sit still long enough to really dive into that.
Yeah. And so it's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. I'm going to try to see if I can't find out where it looks like it was published about 2012. So maybe I can try to find these characters and learn more about it. But there are a lot of parallels from the idea of EOS and traction. And to your point, like it's about getting clear about your destination. They call it the VTO, like your vision traction organizer. Like, who are we? What's our brand? What are our core values? What's our vision? What's our mission? And then, okay, where do we want to be in 5 years? Okay, what do we have to do to reverse engineer that? So like, what are we doing this week to get to that 5-year goal? And what they call rocks. Like, here are the 3 things you're going to focus on this quarter to get to your quarterly goal, to get to that 5-year plan.
Right.
And then the meeting's super short. To your point too, it's like the cascading. I think they start with like, it's like they make it personal, like give us some personal good news. But then it goes down to like, now we're going to cover the KPIs, the numbers. Are we on or off?
Right.
If we're off, drop it down. And you don't talk until you've identified everything. Are you okay? Then you get your rocks. Are you on? Are there any customer issues or employee issues? No. Yes. Drop it down. Are you on or off with your goals this week? On, sweet. Off, drop it down. Now you get to this point where it's called identify, discuss, solve.
I see.
And you're only talking about the stuff that's off or an issue. And then you have the whole team address it, and then it cascades down. So like, I would love to learn more about the 4 disciplines and see what kind of parallels there are there.
Well, they're all telling us the same thing. It's like the Taco Bell method. It's just the same food but packaged differently.
Yeah, it's different branding so you don't get copyright issues, right? It's all the same process.
Sure, and people take their own experience and they apply it and they make it approachable to different readers, but they're all saying the same thing.
Yeah, there's patterns.
And what's funny is when we're talking about this right now, it seems so simple, doesn't it?
Discipline. It is simple. It's hard to do.
It's hard to do because it takes energy, it takes repetition, it takes care, it takes everything to create those, and it takes buy-in from your team, and that's a big one too.
Well, yeah, when you start changing things, why are we doing this? And that's why it's important to understand the why, so they understand. You got to explain that. What about training? How has training evolved?
Well, I think going back to the whole, we created all these positions, and the 84 level was taking care of a lot of culinary things, and district managers were doing things that GM should be doing. We looked at the way we were making pizzas and how long we cook ramen, and timers for things, and what is the best way to do this. And then we've created new training manuals, updated all recipe guides, and have gone through and created some processes that we want the teams to follow that we say are the best way to do this. And they have also put in play like a checklist, like a 40-point checklist that helps the district managers and directors every week go into their respective stores, and they're looking at the same 40 things every time. The staff doesn't know you're coming, and it could be everything from cleaning to upselling. Or is the server upselling? Are we using timers in the kitchen on the fryer? Is the recipe book updated and in play? I mean, it's really cool. It's funny because, again, it seems so simple, but when we walk into a restaurant without intention, we get distracted.
Well, I think a lot of times what happens, we know we need checklists. We create checklists for the opening person. We create checklists for, prep. We create checklists for, or standards on how like a pizza is supposed to look. But we stop that level of system process and procedure at the front line. We don't have checklists for the GM. We don't have checklists for the, AGM. We don't have checklists for the directors. So you need to continue to create that consistency, and like your job is to monitor and to keep constant gentle pressure and all this stuff. And what are you doing at this level to be consistent about that? And like, what are the KPIs you're looking at?
Right.
So like it's you got to build layers and layers and layers of systems on systems.
Well, and just because you have a checklist, if you're not using it,
right,
like it loses its power. The staff goes, well, they never checked that, so I don't care. Right. And then you see things just kind of keep going down.
Well, that's the Danny Meyer's constant gentle pressure. There's drift, right? But you have to create processes to apply the pressure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go
I was just going to say, I don't know what we were speaking about exactly earlier, but I think we were talking about the cascade and like the follow-up, and did we hit this target? And if not, why? I think a lot of the time our team got so focused on, they were doing their job, what they thought was their job. And they weren't recognizing that at Goro, the sales were down $7,000 a week. Because we have in our little recap that we shoot, it has last year, same week total versus this year. And it would be like, 10 grand less or 3 here and 4 here. And they're, when you're looking at it like week to week, you're not really totaling it. But we're talking about a $400,000 revenue decrease at that one unit in 2024. And no one blinked. No one said, we need to do something until now. And we kept, I kept saying like, our sales are down. And they were like, yeah.
But when you track and you measure it and you have like, what changed specifically? You knew they were down, but what changed that make you do something about it?
Recognizing that myself at the end of the year, when I saw the end of the year and went, holy crap, like this is a problem, because we adjust. Okay, let's say our sales were down. Well, our projection was on point, and so our food cost is still 24%. So we're still going to make 10% profit. But what you don't realize is like 10% of this number is only half as much as last year when it was 10% of this number. And that really takes a toll, especially on a growing company. And people weren't really recognizing that. They were going, we've adjusted our forecasting and we're still hitting our targets. But what we weren't empowering them to do and that we weren't spending time on doing is, how do I increase same store sales by 10%? And then taking that 10% and go, 5 of it's going to come from catering, 3 of it's going to come from upselling, and what number am I at? And 2% of it's going to come from marketing tactics, something like that. And we weren't getting that
intentional.
And that's been such a big word for us at a lot of our restaurants right now. And that's the goal. It's establishing sort of a problem, coming up with some solutions, and then setting the path for how we're going to accomplish those, and then getting team buy-in, and then just pushing.
I love this. Is it Jeff and Steve you're working with?
Yes.
Where are they based?
Jeff is based in Austin, and then Steve is in Dallas.
Ooh,
but they come up.
I'm headed to Dallas and Austin.
Oh, yeah?
So I might have to follow up with them and go deeper on this.
Yeah, so part of our deal is that Jeff and Steve come to OKC and spend a week with us at a time every other week. Yeah. So they're really getting involved and they're traveling to all the stores, Tulsa, Stillwater, and working with our teams every week.
I am copying and pasting these emails to my notes to follow up, and this is getting me excited. Like, this is exactly the life I'm living right now. The reason why there's a camper parked in front of your restaurant is so that I don't have just a week in a city and then I have to fly home.
Right.
But like this is my research.
Yeah.
And then I get to find these nuggets, these people and I get to follow the breadcrumbs.
Right.
And I would love to get them on the show.
Tell them they need to give me a discount for this shout out.
And it was Brandon Hunt that put you in touch with them?
Yeah. Well, Brandon, obviously in Austin with Via 313, and
we talked about him in our last episode. You called them out.
Yeah. And it's funny because I hadn't met him yet. I just knew of him and vice versa. And then maybe like 2 years ago, we have another connection I'll tell you about real quick too, which is, so about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5.
Was it 2022?
God, I don't know.
Was it May 12th at 2022? Because I have an email labeled introduction. Hey, Brandon, I hope you're well. It blows my mind. I want you to blah, 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 read Rachel Cope. Did I make that introduction?
Well, I think that we were friends, like sort of on social media of some kind. And so I'm not going to say you didn't help push that or create a different form of communication
totally forgot about that.
for us. But, and that's the awesome thing about restaurants and connecting people in other cities too. So
I love it. It's the best. It's literally what I live to do. This podcast is about that. But sorry, keep going.
So what you're doing is working. So I had reached out to Brandon. I had done it a few times and then been like, my Austin trip fell through. Well, there was this one time, I think I was just feeling kind of stuck. And I wanted to talk to him about Savory Fund and just kind of pick his brain on some things. So I text him that morning. I hop on a flight to Austin a few hours later. He was kind enough to sit down with me at Nickel City there for a while and introduce me to some of his team and chat. And then we went our separate ways. And then later that night, he said, hey, I'm going to some meetings for some new spots I'm working on. Do you want to come with me tomorrow? And I was like, that's so nice. So
Isn't that awesome?
It was so awesome, which I was supposed to fly home. And I was like, I'll just move that back. So he picks me up and takes me to some meetings at a few different sites. Murray's Tavern was being built at the time. And so then I'm standing there with Travis Tober, who you may or may not
I had him
know.
on the show.
Yeah, Travis is standing there. One of their other partners, Brandon, and then a chef named Nick Giannis, who is sort of the culinary partner at Juniper. And at Murray's Tavern, Uncle Nicky's, and he's working on a new place in Chicago right now. But Nick and I ended up connecting because of Brandon, and Nick's hospitality group did the opening menu for where we're sitting right now.
Oh my gosh. I love how this is all connected.
Yeah, it's wild.
You're literally filling my cup right now.
Cool.
And
you deserve it.
Thank
you
you.
Make a lot of connections. You work hard,
but it feels so good. And there's one lesson I've learned is the people who are willing to let down their guard, throw their ego out the window, and talk and support. Like when you give this, have you ever heard the book The Go-Giver? It's a really short book.
No, but I've heard The Giving Tree, which is so sad.
Well, I'm not familiar with The Giving Tree.
It's like a book we read as kids. It's like this tree that keeps giving and giving,
yeah,
and then
there's
dies.
the Giver, which is another one that's kind of weird too. But anyway, I'm talking about The Go-Giver.
No, I don't know that one.
It's just this idea of like, don't be a go-getter, be a go-giver. Go into life looking to take care of other people and making sure other people win. And when you do that over and over, when you exhale, the natural evolution is to inhale. You can't exhale without inhaling. And that idea is if you exhale first, the universe will provide the oxygen you need to thrive.
Interesting.
You have to go help and provide value, be a person of value. And when you do that, the natural reciprocity is things come back. You can't track it. You just have to have faith that if you
I think I always call that karma, but it's sort of the same thing. I always think if I do good things, then good things will come to me.
Don't try to win. Try to make sure other people win. And if everyone that you touch, if you help other people win, you win as it's like a byproduct of helping other people win.
Mostly my life is just wanting to be a good person.
Yeah.
And
I'm so happy, and I totally forgot that I made that introduction until you started talking. And I was like, why is this?
He'll still hit me up. He's like, when are you going to invite me to Elizabetta? Like, when are you coming down again? And we chat back and forth. And we were on a panel together last year at the Restaurant Bar Expo, which is actually happening right now in Vegas. And, it's just, I love it. It's been really important for me. Are you familiar with Lauren Bailey?
Yeah, I had her on the show too.
Yeah, she's incredible. And she was introduced to me by some developers here in the city who also introduced me to an architect. And this was probably 5 years ago. And the architect for this restaurant was that guy.
Yeah. My vision for the future of Restaurant Unstoppable is to do what we're talking about, but to build systems around it. Mm-hmm. And so much, I think now is actually a good time to talk about marketing, the world of marketing. It's so easy to manipulate reality today if you know how to pull the strings, you know how to play the game of PR and promotion. And I want to cut through all that noise. And I think at the end of the day, word of mouth is still king. And if you can just have conversations with people and be able to like take your time and really drill down and like listen and like look for the cues, the breadcrumbs, and connect the dots and to amplify the reality of who are actually the good people doing good work. What is the technology that will really help you in your business? Like, what are people excited to talk about? If you pay attention to all that and cut through all the noise of, hey, if I give you $100,000, can you get these people on your podcast to, amplify this thing? That's the direction I saw myself possibly going. Mm-hmm. And it took me about a year to realize I don't want to go down that road.
Right.
And I backpedal out of it to focus on what we're talking about now, which is just trying to shine light on reality.
Yeah.
And it's to hear that what you just share with me just like reinforces that I'm on the right path. Thank you so much. Sorry, that was more of a rant than I intended to go on. So where are we at with time? We're at an hour and 22 minutes. I think I have you for another 20 minutes. So anything we haven't discussed in terms of growth or evolution, your vision going forward. I did want to talk about a little more about fractional CFOs and how to, when do you know you're ready for that? Or like, what should we know about fractional CFOs?
Mine kind of came to me in an interesting way, which is that he's actually our tax guy. And I met him through some bankers in town who all said, this guy's a genius and he does some fractional CFO work. And he was working with one of our investors at the time on that investor's personal business. And so I had moved all of our tax work over to their firm from a different firm. And in doing that, created this relationship with him. And I said, I heard that you're doing some fractional CFO work for this person. I could really use someone to talk to at a high level who could help give me guidance and basically come in and work with our accounting team, have a monthly meeting about where we are and all these things. Well, we started with really high hopes for that, but he's just so busy and he's growing his own company. And so we've tiered it down from, this number and this many hours every 2 weeks to this. And now really we just meet bi-weekly, but he's also available to answer a lot of my questions, even about, since he does a lot of my own personal taxes, the company's taxes, all these things, he's able to think about the company as a whole and give us really great guidance. And it's been invaluable to me in a lot of different ways to have him. I would love to have him full time, as I think I mentioned earlier, but that just isn't a possibility. So at some point we will add a full time financial person to the team who's really spending a lot of time analyzing data and handling, renegotiation of loans and rates and moving money and that kind of stuff.
Is there a benchmark when you are ready for a fractional CFO to do a stepping stone?
I've been doing this for 11 years. The company's total revenue is probably north of like 16 million annually. And it's a lot. It's a lot when you have a lot of bank accounts because our ownership structure is not one group. It's a lot of people because that's how you start. I think we might have covered this in the first one, but this store has 2 partners who've been here since 2013. And then this one has 3 and this one's just me. And this one, being able to run a company as a whole would make the financial operations of this company a lot easier, but that's just not where we are. And so I really needed help with this sooner than maybe other people would if they were running their company as one ownership group, I think. But yeah, I'm not sure that there's really a benchmark. It's just sort of how much can you handle? How many employees do you have? And he's been super helpful with any kind of payroll. We've been through 3 different payroll companies, and he sort of goes and negotiates all of those things. And so there's give and take on that. I think that's kind of up. I wish there was just a flat number I could give you or a marker where you go, now you're ready. But they're not cheap. You're at least paying 6 figures for that person. If you're getting someone, really good, it's probably closer to 130, 150 grand a year.
What would you pay full time for somebody?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm working on figuring that out right now. Like, what kind of person am I looking for? Because I'm so involved in the finances of the company that I'm able to keep up with a lot of those things. But as we continue to grow and really getting that analyst, am I really looking for a controller? But we don't really have an in-house accounting team right now. So I'm kind of in a funky spot with that. So I'll let you know where I end up. But 2 years ago, we put an ad out on Indeed looking for a controller, CFO type person. And Adam, our fractional CFO, helped me work through a lot of those, the people who responded to that ad. I think we were putting it at 130 grand plus benefits. So the whole package was probably around, 140, 150 grand a year.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not chump change by any means. And that tops out what a lot of our C-suite would even make right now.
Yeah. I think there's going to be more and more people chasing that fractional chief, career. And I think as more and more people see that as an opportunity, the prices are probably going to get a little more competitive. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to follow. One thing that really stood out from our initial conversation that really pulled me in is what you were doing in terms of culture to take care of your staff. You offered insurance. I think you were doing 401k too.
We've done some matching here and there, but that's not really at every level.
You are giving equity to partners.
Yes.
And I think the other thing that's really interesting is you're going beyond that to, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and who knows how accurate this is, but it seems to be the closest thing in terms of accuracy that we know of, that your basic, physiological needs. Do I have warmth? Do I have shelter? Do I have food? Do I have security? Right? And then beyond that, it is, I feel seen and valued? And then beyond that is, am I growing? Mm-hmm. And I think that the best people focus on, are you finding your definite purpose in life? And if you can help people find that definite purpose by, hey, making them a chef partner in one of your restaurants, right? Now you have purpose, but how can we focus on not just professional, but personal? I think we create opportunity for growth in the restaurant industry in terms of like career growth, but I think we're set up so well to also help people to literally transform our staff and our people by giving them life lessons like wellness and fiscal responsibility. And that's what I'm getting to. You were focusing on that sort of thing. Has that program evolved?
No, I can't say that it's evolved much past what we were doing before. And I'd like to get back to that at some point. I think we kind of lost sight of it when we were focusing on other things. We still, care about the staff. If someone comes to us with a question or a need, I'd say 99% of the time it's taken care of. Like we try to be there for them. I'm handling those things as they come to me and not necessarily going looking for them right now, as I'm kind of making a plan for the structure of the company as a whole. And those things are all amazing, but they do add up. And in a down year, not just last year, but kind of over the year and a half, we're looking at all that. And what I really found a lot of the time is we created a pretty healthy bonus structure over the past 2 years. And that is what they care about sometimes more than a gym membership.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to look at people and go...
Gym membership, yoga. I think you were also talking about like mental wellness.
Yeah. And we still connect them to those things. We still use our power and leverage with nonprofits and people who we donate to get things for our teams, whether that be a free, health
membership,
a session here or a gym membership. I don't want to sit here and say that we do that exponentially or do that a lot right now. I do care about those things, and I'd love to see us, after we get through this restructuring of processes and stuff, go, okay, now back to people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to have all of your feet in different buckets at the same time, right? But you're still doing more than most people. And, you also said something that really struck a chord with me, or more, not like it was like a reality of our industry, and that when you tried to like come to your team with like a new structure of, I think it was pay or something like that, or I can't remember what, like you gave them options, right? And they opted for the cash option,
right?
And I think that is a reflection of the reality of the people that come work for us really just don't know how to create like generational wealth. They don't know how, they aren't fiscally responsible. And I think that is where we can really serve our people by saying, like you're making cash tips, right? You have all this money in your pocket at the end of the night. Like, what are you doing with it?
Right.
Like, do you know how to, are you putting away 10% of that into savings in a high interest savings account so you can create, you can get out from underneath me in this job? Like I think it starts there. As I'm saying this, what do you?
It's a fine line,
but they don't have to want it.
Right. And again, like, my attorneys will tell me not to give legal advice or financial advice or tax advice, which I see why they say that. Right. The liabilities of maybe doing that. So
Rachel is not a lawyer.
Rachel is not a lawyer.
Disclaimer.
Right. But again, and it feels, I'm listening to you say that, and I think my thoughts about this have changed a little bit. And some of it's because it feels intrusive on my end to say, what are you doing with that? Or to say, hey, like, I try not to give too much like financial advice unless I'm asked about it, because it's, as much as I want to help people, sometimes maybe those people don't want me to ask that question, and I don't want it to feel like I'm judging them.
Right.
Or momming them or whatever. Sometimes I might tell a story about myself, whether it's true or not, just kind of in general to a group of servers or something, about like right before tax season, so that they don't get caught in a bad spot, and be like, one time in 2012, I made so many cash tips and I forgot to save any of it. And then April came, maybe there's that kind of story that's sort of a...
if you're a seasonal restaurant, like, I was making all this money and then the winter rolled around and then I couldn't pay rent.
Yeah, I would say, the way that I care about people and show that the most right now is that I make sure they feel like they are in a safe, inclusive environment, that they can come to us with anything, and that we are here to listen without judgment and help, whether that be job related or other. And then I'm trying to promote the hell out of these restaurants and structure them in a way that helps them make the most money possible. I don't have 8 servers on the floor when I could have 5, because then they would only have 2 table sections instead of 4.
Right.
But with that comes, you have to be a great server to get a 4-table section. So it's kind of a little bit of give and take. But those are the ways I feel like I'm most able to create, that help for staff right now. So it has shifted a little bit away from those programs that we were working on, but I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to come up with some new ideas once we go through this restructuring that we're seeing right now.
Cool. Anything that hasn't come out that you want to talk about before we say goodbye?
No, we've covered a lot of ground again today.
It's been a lot of fun. I am curious, before we wrap it up, tech stack. What do you work with? I saw Toast. Are you still working with Paycom?
Nope.
What'd you switch to?
Toast Payroll.
Oh, okay. Why'd you make that switch?
Some restaurant accounting is different. And some of those larger companies, and we've been through several of them, and it's no offense to any of them, they're just not really geared towards restaurants, in my opinion. And with all the integrations Toast offers and some of the discounts we were able to get by, having multiple integrations through Toast, credit card matching, a lot of stuff that we started doing with them, made it where financially it's a seamless it's seamless for us. Because it's all in their clock ins and clock outs and all their tips that they claimed and everything. I'm not having to take that and then punch it into a different spreadsheet and then make sure it's all correct by looking back at these two. We don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
And so that's been great. They have payroll cards, direct deposit. It's been, and the staff is able to sign up and look at their own stuff. And so that's been great. Hot Schedules also integrates with Toast and helps us with the forecasting that we do weekly, whether it be labor projection or things like that. We've been testing Margin Edge, and we tried to use, I can't remember what it was called, Extra Chef, which was another integration through Toast that was really for inventory. And we thought it would help us with ordering and really tracking, those invoices that you lose, paper invoices and things along the way. And again, eliminate inefficiency at the GM level where they're having to go scan all these invoices and then enter them into a spreadsheet. And then our accountant was having to take that spreadsheet and punch them into QuickBooks. It was crazy. It was like, this is 4 steps. It could be 1. And Extra Chef didn't quite work out as Toast was still in kind of beta testing with that. Also, we were using QuickBooks Desktop at the time instead of QuickBooks Online, which we've shifted to now. I don't know if QuickBooks is going to be the best thing for us. We're exploring Restaurant 365 for, potentially a move to that at some point. I don't like to start things in the middle of the year. It's too complicated.
Yep.
But I know some friends who have shifted to that or speak highly of that. So we're exploring that. And then what else has been helpful? Oh, this has been an interesting one here. So we take reservations lightly. I think Goro is the only one of our concepts that allows reservations, and that's through OpenTable. But here we opted to use 7 rooms, which no one else really in Oklahoma is using. And the only places I had really seen it were in Las Vegas and New York and some of the larger cities. But when we started digging into the difference between Resi, OpenTable, and 7 rooms, man, we really loved a lot of the communication tools with guests that 7 rooms allows us to have. It's extremely user friendly on my end. I'm constantly looking at reservations. I can make all these notes. It tracks customer spending. it shows you what they had and when, and there's just so much data in there that's really interesting, and it has an integration with Toast as well. So we've been pushing that, and so far the guests seem to be loving it. It's giving us information that we need. So yeah, tech is so important. Toast loyalty program, pushing those emails, kind of eliminated MailChimp for us, and it is scary though. It's scary to put all your eggs in one basket, and I've mentioned about 6 things that integrate with Toast right now, and so I try to be wary of that.
I'm happy that you're aware of that, because it seems like the rest of the industry is not. I want to be clear. Toast has been a supporter of the podcast in the past. I think that they are a great solution, and they are, in terms of like user experience and their technology, it's a fine product. My concern is with organizations getting too big in our industry. You pointed out 7 rooms. Aside from them, there's only 2 players really at the game. It's either OpenTable or Resy.
Yep.
And Talk was doing a good job for a while, but Resy purchased them. And should I point out that Resy's owned by American Express?
Right.
And it's just like, we always talk about, like, we shake our fists at the government, like, you need to do something about this. At the end of the day, we are putting these people into business when we pay for their services. Like, we need to start taking some accountability with who we're putting into power.
Right.
And it takes education, but I also think there's a level of ignorance there, because people just don't talk about this stuff. And I'm not saying any of these organizations are evil, but if there becomes one player, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that's what we just need to be aware of. Like, we need to be aware about fragmenting these organizations. I think with AI, and as technology evolves, it's going to level the playing field, is my hope, so long as one person doesn't win that AI game.
Right.
As I'm saying this, what are you thinking about?
I'm just thinking that the world is a scary place right now, and that it's going to be an interesting few years. And I think, as long as you're aware of the monopolization of some of those things and who's really behind the curtain, and what's, just think about the different risks that come with that, and make sure that you have a backup plan.
Yeah, I don't think it's our fault. I think it's in human nature, and I want to do some research on this, but if you look at, like, I think human nature is to follow word of mouth, and we tend to go with what everybody else is doing, because that's like the path of least resistance to find a solution. Well, what are you doing? What are you doing? But when you have a national and global marketplaces, word of mouth kind of like that. It's kind of like how we evolved in our natural evolutions no longer serve us in a modern world. Like, we're like anxiety, for example. Like, we're afraid of everything. We're always stressed out because at any moment a lion could have jumped out and killed us. But we don't need that level of anxiety and fear. Like, it's baked into our DNA. We evolved to be this way. And I think we also evolved to trust our neighbor and to talk to people. What are you doing? What are you doing? That worked when there were like thousands and thousands and thousands of micro markets spread across the country, where if you needed a burger, like, you would talk to your neighbor, like, where do I get a burger? Or you need a haircut, you need new shoes, you need a seamstress, word of mouth. And then that was a market. And there was, a place for everybody. But as the world started to syndicate and information started to spread and the market got bigger and bigger, we still function the same way. And the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer.
I mean, the gap of the inequality of wealth is the largest it's ever been.
And I think we are to blame. And I think it's because we're not aware of our hard wiring of how we just kind of default to what the most people say, or whoever has the most money to spend the most money on marketing to get their brand out there. Whoever has the most money wins. So it's just like, we need to be aware of how the systems work so we can make conscious decisions to counter it.
Yeah, no one made me use Toast, And
again, Toast isn't an evil company.
I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Did it fit my needs at the time? And, again, I think as long as people are aware of what you're doing and why, then okay.
I think there are some really smart players who are starting to figure this out, that like, we can't give all the power to one company. And I'm not trying to like narrow or limit out like the Toasts, the Restaurant 365s of the world, but we do need to be aware of how big these companies are getting, and if they win, we lose.
I hadn't gone that far with it. I was just thinking from on a smaller scale. For me, it's like when I sign a contract, what are the terms?
Yeah.
And what's possible? You really have to assess your risk, and you have to have a backup plan for everything that you can make one for.
Yeah.
And that's how I've made it this far. Is there's been all kinds of stuff that has happened. But I try to have, it's kind of like how I used to play shortstop once I got hurt a few times and it wasn't as quick as I used to be. I used to have to be smarter in like a different way. Not so I could cheat, but like if I knew that there was a batter that always pulls the ball left, I was paying more attention to that, and I would have 3 plans based on which pitch our pitcher was going to throw and then I would take 3 steps that way. But if she hit it the other way, I was ready for that too. And I think that's sort of how I approach work a lot of the time, is even before we make a big decision, is going, okay, if they go this way, then we have these 3 options and I'm comfortable with these 3 things. But always being prepared, always being on your toes to make a different decision if you have to, and don't get stuck.
Yeah. I think it's a great way to start wrapping this thing up.
Yeah.
Great advice. So the last time I had you on the show, I asked you 3
don't
questions. Well, I'm curious, since 2021 when I last spoke to you, what have you rolled out in your restaurants? What's new that is making you, whether it's a process, a system, a value that's making you truly unstoppable?
Oh gosh. At this restaurant that we're sitting in right now, and this is something that we're taking throughout all the concepts, is getting back to hospitality and really focus on the guest. I think over the last few years, we were so reduced to numbers. But what we don't realize is that those numbers are affected by our training and about guest interactions and about being present mentally, physically. And so we're being more intentional.
I love that.
And that is the first key to doing the easiest thing we can do to help ourselves.
Yeah. I love that. So how have you personally evolved? Our mission statement is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. I think we're going to do that by transforming our listeners, helping them evolve. How have you personally transformed and evolved?
I think, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, stepping back and looking at myself and going, what do I want to do? What am I good at? How can I best benefit the company and the people around me by being the best version of myself? And even just recognizing that, hey, we need help.
Can't do it alone.
Yeah, you can't do it alone. We want to go far, so we're reaching out to other experts and getting some help, and setting that goal even for this year was really one of the first times we've ever really done that, and then rolled a whole plan out for the team, because it was just it was overwhelming to me to have to put all that together as just one person, and then I didn't really quite know how. So anyways, I think me personally stepping back and recognizing what I want personally, professionally, and then setting that goal, ways to get there, and then presenting that to everyone is going to be really key for this year.
Yeah, I love that. This has been so much fun. I want to ask you the 3 pieces of wisdom. I think that once in a string of relationship, I'll ask that one time, but this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much. If we want to connect with you, or if we, enjoy today's conversation, maybe we want to come work for you. Maybe I can connect them like I connected you to Brandon Hunt.
Yes.
What's the best way to connect?
I love it. Our website is 84hospitality.com. The restaurants each have their own individual sites, but they're all tied to that as far as applying there or reaching us there. A lot of people message me on Instagram. So at the other R Cope is my handle on there. And yeah, you guys can just find us through either one of those things, and I'll be here.
Yeah, this is episode 1191. We'll try to link to any tools or services that were recommended and how to connect with you. And who do you respect and admire? Who's like really on your radar? Somebody that should be on my radar.
You always do that, but you already asked me this, and I texted them to you. But you're seeing some really good work be done here in the city. I think I mentioned Zach and Silvana at Sedalia's. I'm enjoying watching.
Connected with them yesterday.
Great. And then Brian and Bailey.
Second time they've been referred to me.
Love it. Watching them, and these are funny because they're Oklahoma City people who were living and working in Los Angeles who came back, and that's what I want. I want more people who have that outside experience to come here and keep creating these great concepts and keep helping our city grow, and great places for me to have a beverage and eat.
That's good.
Yeah, Brian Bogert at the Social Order. He's a genius, and yeah, there's some good ones.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This is where I say I cannot do what I do without people like you, willing to get open, willing to get honest and vulnerable. You make what I do possible, and there is no questioning you are unstoppable.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.